Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. I am your host, Rodney Butler, and today we have a very special guest on as part of our mental health series today. And I'm going to first explain. I usually don't have glasses on when when I do the roundtable, but I happened to go to the optometrist today, and I got my eyes, my pupils dilated, and so there are some things I can see up close, and some things I can't see up close, and I can see some things far away, and I can't see other things far away. so, so anyway, I'll be taking my glasses on and off today. I hope it don't irritate you too much. That being said, as I said, we have a very special guest on today as part of our mental health series, and her name is Miss Rachelle Moore. And Rachelle, let the audience know a little bit about who you are and why you do the work that you do, because what you do in the field of mental health is a little different, a little unorthodox. Explain to us what you do and why, and who you are a little bit.
Oh my. How much time do I have?
About 55 minutes.
Okay. So you want me to condense me? I will do that. Like carnation, instant condensed milk. And I'm only joking. Thank you for the prompt. Well, I do what I do, I think, because I've always wanted to change the world. And, at the risk of sounding idealistic about that, I mean, it's been since I was a little kid. I always wanted to change the world. And I finally found a methodology to practice my therapy that I believe does that in a really beautiful way. It hits all of my spots, right? Philosophically, spiritually, politically, small p. Just it's like my answer to what I was looking for. And the thing that's even more beneficial about it is it actually helps people. I mean, I have seen people grow and develop as a result of partaking in this work with me. It's entirely creative, it's entirely unscripted, informed heavily by improvisation, as in the theater. And I studied in New York for a number of years, and I'm still studying, because I believe, because it's developmental and growing, that it's not the same all the time. I started this work in the 90s, and I have been at home in my soul with it ever since. It freed me up from so many things that I can't even begin to say. And I mean, it's how I live my life, hopefully, by the principles of it. And I don't know. And I've always wanted to help people, Black people, because I have a special belief in us needing to be leading some things. And I'm a fan of history, the history we did not learn in school. And that's also a part of the methodology that I learned. History was enormously important. Dr. Fred Newman, who's the founder of social therapeutics, said that history is the cure. And he believed that if we were cut off from it, which so many of us are, we didn't have a shot at knowing who we were now and who we could become and where we could be going. And so I flipped the script and decided to really dig into history, which has gotten me now to studying alchemy, which is about as ancient as you can get. And it is so on point. And
so before we get into before we take that deep dive into your training, which included philosophy and improv and psychology, I want to just let the people get to know you a little bit better, a little bit deep we'll take a little deeper dive into who you are, because I think who you are is going to tie in very important. It's going to tie in at the very end when we talk about, the training and how the work that you do, how it benefits people, right? Because it's benefited you. You use it in your everyday life as well. So I think that's why, and I know you're going to talk about that. So one of the things that I know you talk about is that you are a child of the, from the world, right?
Yeah.
And just hit on that just a little bit. You being a child from the world.
Yeah, I consider myself a global human being. I'm an Army brat, and my dad was an officer when I was born, and I spent all my formative years through college in the military environment, traveling with him, and really, the family was in the military. It wasn't just dad. I mean, we all were part of that system, that institution. And I loved it. I loved traveling. Every 2 or 3 years, I was always ready to go. And I loved meeting people from other cultures. I loved languages, and learned a few, not very fluently, but I loved all the culture that I was learning when we traveled. And so I've never felt like I was geographically assigned anywhere. And when I was younger, I used to even feel sorry for people that were in the same spot when we went back to visit my grandmother, like they hadn't moved. I didn't know why they didn't move. My mother was like, everybody doesn't move like that. But it gave me a taste of who I wanted to be, I think. And it was much more expansive than a lot of people that I knew in my generation. I have 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, and we don't live near each other, but they all grew up in that same environment, and they all, in their adult life, kept on in the military, either by their own entering the military, like my brother, who's now retired, or my sister marrying into the military. So we tended to carry on that tradition, and it was very, empowering, very empowering. And I love living where I live. I don't want to live outside the country, but I enjoy visiting all the places that I've been. So yeah, that was an important start for me to start out moving all the time and loving it. My mother hated it, but I loved it.
Yeah, it's definitely I tell people all the time, is the military is not a job. It's a way of life. It is a way of life. Yeah, it's a way of life. It's an entire thing. But another thing I wanted you to hit on before we take that deep dive is, you said that you never knew what you wanted to be when you were growing up, but you were good at imitation, and you were sort of a chameleon. Now, the reason I want you to hit on that a little bit, because when we go into the training that you've done, and when you start explaining to the people how philosophy, improv, and psychology can work to help them, the one that's going to stand out that people are not used to hearing is improv, right? So people hear, philosophy, and they hear psychology all the time, but then you throw in improv. And like me, when I first learned about improv, all I could think about was, comedy, because that's where comedians have to do a lot of improvisation. And so, but of course I've learned that, improv is much deeper than that. And so I think when we if we talk about it a little bit now with your life in philosophy and improv and psychology, I think the improv, like I said, is going to kind of not throw people off, but it's going to be new. But then if you talk about right now a little bit how you were good at imitation and that you were sort of a chameleon, I think this goes to help you be a very great person to lead improvisations the way that you do.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it is a theater term, and it actually is one of the few American invented theater things in the 20s or something. Um, but yeah, I come from a family of musicians, and so a lot of my family were performers, some professionally and some just you know for fun. And so I started out studying music, and I thought I was going to be a famous pianist, but I wasn't that great, so I gave that up. But we used to do shows when I was little, make my parents sit and watch us and applaud and whatnot. We wanted to entertain all the time. And then traveling, as a kid, I never wanted to stick out as different than people that I was living with for 2 or 3 years. So I learned how to speak like them and have that sort of accent wherever I was in whatever culture I was in. And I remember when I got to college, the speech teacher I had said she couldn't tell where I was from because she named about 6 places that it sounded like I was from, and I had lived in all 6 of them. And she said somehow I had acquired the ability to imitate whatever you call it, I forget, can't even think of the word now, dialects in English, and then I like to play too with dialects and stuff, and so it was kind of natural for me to gravitate towards improv, mainly because it's unscripted. That's the other thing I love about it. I felt very constricted growing up in a military environment. There were so many rules and have to and this and that. Improv frees me up from that feeling of being bound in because I could create it like now. I mean, we're always doing it, but this was intentional philosophically. Like this conversation with you is created with you. I couldn't be having this any other way except from what you're saying to me. So I'm right now building, hopefully, with what you're saying. And it's also relational. And I always felt alienated growing up, different. I'm not like anybody else, that kind of stuff, and odd. And it's a lonely feeling. And what I realize is improv helps build relationships in an intimate way that no other method of anything I ever learned has ever done. And it has sort of soothed that distance feeling that I experienced most of my life. And it doesn't matter how long I'm connected to the people when I do what I do. It could be 5 minutes or it could be for years. A lot of it has been for years. And it's such a gift because this is not really new. It's new in the language we're using, but people have been doing this for thousands of years as far as using energy in a quantum kind of sense, like quantum physics, energy, and vibing. I like to say vibing off of what's going on without having to know in an epistemological way. And so it's just been freedom for me because I always felt unfree, growing up and all the stuff that I had to go through, and the trauma and other things that, just
Right.
came along the way to shape how I see myself, how I see the world. But I always wanted to change things for especially children, the disenfranchised folks and poor people. And so I was fortunate enough to stay on a path that got me where I am. I hope I didn't meander too far because I tend to
No, because I think a lot of people, I want you to, be open and be honest, because I think when people are listening to, therapists and people in, your world, in, in philosophy and psychology and all that stuff, I think they want to relate. And I think that people are, and that's why I want you to start with your story because, I know your story pretty good. And so I want other people to hear your story, but so that way they can relate to as you speak and start to really take a deep dive into social therapeutics and psychology and improv and all the things that you're going to talk about a little bit later. Then they understand it's like, I can relate to her because I'm telling you, I guarantee you there are people out listening right now who felt a lot of the same ways that you felt, even with changing the world and feeling, constricted, or sometimes feeling isolated, or whatever. And it's like, they look and it's like, hey, she's going to tell us shortly how all of that helped those issues, that she may have had. So yeah, just and in fact, before we go into social therapeutics and all that, I know that you believe in and speak a lot on synchronicity. And I want you to just talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people, you know, like you, but synchronicity is prevalent to them. It's just that they may not know that it's prevalent to them, and help us understand that.
Okay, well, I'm still learning about it. It's kind of a new word in my later adult life, but it's about things that happened that I couldn't possibly have brought about, that came about as a result of the universe. And it's always something good, and it happens every day. There's something synchronous happening every day.
And Rachelle, not to cut you off, but it's that thing in the black community. In the black community,
yeah.
synchronicity is that thing when we say, "Look at God."
Okay.
Because it's always good. You see what I'm saying? And so when we say, and you didn't know it was coming, you just say, "Look at God," right? You hear it all the time. I think that is what exactly. That's kind of what it is. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's more powerful than us.
Yes.
It has to be, because we couldn't, and it's what we would have wanted to do if we had had the power to do it, but we couldn't possibly. And it's right on time all the time. And I guess for me, it started when I realized why I became a therapist. I thought I was crazy. I thought something was wrong with me that needed fixing in a mental kind of way. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something was wrong with me. And that's what brought me to studying psychotherapy, not any kind of altruistic feeling at the time, like I wanted to help. I wanted it to help me because I thought something was wrong. And I couldn't tell anybody because growing up, I didn't talk about that kind of stuff. In my family, we didn't talk about it. So that's what led me to going into psychotherapy, because I felt like if I could read it in a book, then I could figure it out and I could fix it. I wasn't a person that was going to ask somebody to help me. I was going to fix it. And I remember I read some kind of book. I don't know what it was about, but there was some term called monotony. I don't know what it means, but it fit what my life looked like at the time. So I thought, okay, now I know what's wrong with me, and I don't have to do anything else. I didn't go into therapy because I didn't trust anybody, but something was wrong with me. That's what drove me to seeking out what's going on in the mind, my mind, not anybody else's. And synchronicity is something that has evolved out of my living my life in such a way that I'm now paying attention to what happens every day. Like you said, oh, that was nothing but God. Couldn't be anything else. And I struggled with those concepts growing up. I was, I guess, considered not atheist. I was more of an agnostic growing up. It was interesting. I love religions. I studied as many world religions as I could because they all made sense. So I loved how people believed strongly in things. And I just didn't particularly believe in much other than myself at the time. And so I had to figure out what was wrong with me and fix it. That was my impetus. And of course that changed over time, because today I don't believe in that kind of diagnostic thing that something's wrong with people. I think I work with what's right with people. The world has some stuff that I won't go into the words I usually use, but people are who we are, and we have a lot of abilities to change and make things better. I just think we're impacted by what's going on around us. We're not robots. So yeah, I really felt like something was wrong, and I had to find out because nobody was talking about those things, to include racism. In my family, it wasn't discussed, and yet it was always operating. I grew up in a double kind of segregated environment. the military segregates by rank and class. So my dad was in the upper class of that institution, yet wherever I went, I knew we weren't upper class because I was always showing up black. And couldn't talk about that in my family. For some reason, it was just not discussed. It was crazy making not to be able to talk about what was actually going on all the time. And I think that was kind of underlying why I was thinking something was wrong with me too, because no one was talking about what I was noticing. And, it was like foreboding to even bring up some of the things that I was noticing and feeling bad about. So I don't know, did that answer what you were?
Absolutely. And you even hit on the racism part about how it how it manifested, or how it kind of shaped your world and your opinion. And the only reason I say that is because I definitely am one of the people who believe that, racism is a national, it's a medical thing. It's a health crisis,
Yeah,
and it affects every aspect of. And so I'm glad you, as a medical health professional, or, in that, to say, to say it out loud, and people have to keep saying it over and over again, whether they are mental health or physical health professionals. Racism is a health crisis as well. Yep.
Yeah. It can be fatal.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And okay, so I think now is a good time to actually go ahead and segue into the the technical part of what we're going to talk about a little bit. And that is, I would like for you to start, though, with explaining and letting people know how social therapeutics can, what it is and how it can be beneficial in the lives of the listeners today.
Yeah. I think you said it earlier when you said something about everyday life. Social therapeutics is an everyday life methodology.
Okay.
And Fred Newman also liked to talk about the magic of it, and the everydayness of it, the ordinariness of it. He always talked about ordinary people do extraordinary things. And learning this method was one of the most challenging things for me, because he said the experience of it is as if we're on the ocean on a raft, building the raft plank by plank as we're floating across the ocean. We're on it and building it at the same time. So what we're doing is what we're doing. It's dialectic. It's got a lot of philosophical nuances, which I didn't think I was smart enough to even learn. And he talked about philosophy, small p, not the highfalutin kind of highbrow way that I had learned to think about philosophy. So it was about history, really. And, the people that came before us that taught us different things. And so it was very practical to me. It wasn't like a smoke and mirrors kind of thing. It was very practical because it was about people building community and making the world a better place. And it was a serious kind of purpose that people talked about. They had been activists all their lives, the people that were teaching me social therapeutics, and I didn't realize that I was, because I wasn't in any particular organization that looked like that. But that is who I was and who I still am. And so what I loved about it is the practicality of it, and also the humanity of it. It's about relationships. It's about being giving and kind and loving to each other. That humans do that, and yet ironically, a lot of the people that were my teachers were not even in a category that people would call religious. They were the opposite of that. And yet they were the most spiritual people that I had met in a long time, because they were about people and helping people in their daily lives. And I could see that that's what they were doing. But I think the thing that really struck me about it was the intimacy of the relationship building, because it's in the room. It's what we're doing together. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm actually coming from a non-knowing place. I'm coming from a wondering place, wonder and curiosity, to learn together. So we're creating together as we're even talking. We create new vocabularies together. I don't believe in being, tied into what I like to call thingifying everything, that everything has a definition, it's in a box kind of thing. One of the kindest things clients have said to me is, you don't talk like a therapist. That is a real compliment for me in terms of the identity that I place in that profession, because I was taught by traditional people. Some of them I didn't agree with at all, but I had to learn what they were teaching me. But that was the traditional, and I never wanted to do that. I was disappointed when I finished grad school because I thought, now how am I going to help anybody? I don't know how to help anybody. But fortunately, synchronicity, the very first job I had right out of grad school was with a social therapist. And what I noticed, she was a social worker like me, and I had to ask her, how did you learn how to be so nice to people? You treat patients like they're humans. You don't treat them like a diagnosis on two legs. She said, I'm a social therapist. And that's how my entry into that world started. And it was like the whole sky opened up for me. And she was humane, she was loving, she was kind. She spoke to people like they could all understand what she was saying. She didn't talk down to people. It was just very giving. And I saw how people could learn, because one of the things about improv is it can be playful. It's not always playful, but it can be. And if you notice how children learn the most, that is how they learn. And so some of the philosophers I followed were child psychologists who studied family and child development and how children learn. And that is a huge part of the how of social therapy. We play together. We make things happen together. We build things together. Like we're building a conversation together. For what it's worth.
Well, I'm a former educator. So one of the most effective ways of allowing kids to learn is what educators call free play, right? Mm-hmm. And and I think that is like today, you got all this helicopter parenting and all this other stuff, and the people are just over their kids 24/7, everything, all the monitors and everything. And so when people like, well, why does it seem to be so difficult for these newer generations, the millennials and the centennials or whatever, Generation Y or whatever? It seems to be like some of their, like, it's like they can't, a lot of, and I'm not saying all of them, of course, but some of the things that I look at that my generation, what we knew at certain points, and I'm someone that was able to teach all levels of primary school, at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level, so all the way up through. And I'm like, man, it just seemed like we, at this point in fifth grade, we knew so much more of this, or in eighth grade and in 11th grade and so forth. And I think free play had a lot to do with that, and allowing, like you said, if you're free playing, you have much more opportunity to improv. It's hard to improv in a row of seats. in a
Yeah.
classroom, right? It's very
Right.
difficult to improv that. I mean, improv in that situation. But
Hmm.
once you're out on the, it used to be like you had recess. You had recess. You had PE. PE is structured.
Yeah.
Recess supposed to not be,
Right.
and that's why you do a lot of recess in elementary school, used to anyway. They don't really do that stuff now, right?
I know
Recess
it.
is like out. It's out. You got PE in the ninth grade or something, but and it's missed opportunities for improvisation, if you ask me, and our young people.
Hmm. Yep. So it cut out the creativity that young people have and
Yes,
are able to learn from. Um, and I find that very sad. And what I do is I work with adults, all diverse cultures of adults. I don't work with the children myself. I don't
right.
have that gift or talent. I work with the children and the adults that I see because it's that kid that we never really got to know or nurture growing up that comes to therapy. It's that sensitive person that's still
You
here.
work with the children and the adults
The
that you
adults,
see. Oh yeah,
yes. And I
yeah.
hated that.
That's worth repeating.
Yeah, well, whatever. I mean, I used to hate how there was something called inner child work back when I was learning therapy. I couldn't stand that inner child thing. And what I didn't realize was it was because of how disconnected I personally was at the time from mine, because I didn't like
Mm,
the powerlessness of the child. When I was a child, I
right.
couldn't wait to grow up. I could not wait because then nobody was going to tell me what to do ever, 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 ever again. Well,
Right.
where did I go? I mean, that's a delusion, illusion. It's not like nobody's ever go. But I was not free as a child, and I hated it. I would not look at childhood fondly for a while because it was just awful. Well, so I suppressed that part of me. I wanted to be grown so fast and in control so fast, which is the biggest illusion. And so social therapeutics helped me deal with my disconnect. It was my disconnect in me. And that's how I'm able to help adults that still kind of struggle with some of that same kind of disconnect, energetically, spiritually. It's part of our development that we just kind of, depending on how we grew up. But it was really what drove me kind of crazy. And now with the adults and with improv, a lot of them, when I tell them I want to do something, different, if they're willing, they'll say, "Oh, that's silly." Yeah, it really is. You're absolutely right. And it makes sense when we do it. But it doesn't initially because we're not trained to think that way. It looks like that's for children. It's not for adults. Well, yeah. Yeah, but look
But
at
if
how
they
children
but if they,
grow.
if they say that most of our um, adult issues comes from childhood
Family.
issues, trauma, or whatever you want to label it, then shouldn't the therapy look a little childish
Yep.
on the surface anyway?
I think so, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And when you look at the learning curve, and I'm not in education like you are, but I know how from infancy to I forget what age, what the child learns is just phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we can't do it that
You,
way as
just about
adults.
everything you're going to learn is learned by the time you're 8.
Something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like a sponge.
Yes.
Well, in other cultures, like in China, for example, teachers go out to play with the kids during recess. They play with the children. They find value in play. That surprised me. I don't know anything much about China, but I thought that was surprising because they were very much. I think they even studied Vygotsky, who was one of the philosophers that I studied about child development and learning. And play was one of the most efficient way to learn. And children do it naturally.
Well, doesn't we talked about improv and free play is very, similar in its core structure. So if you're doing a professional, not a professional, if you're doing a improv exercise, right?
Yeah.
Then doesn't that improv exercise, wouldn't it benefit more if that improv exercise has a facilitator, right? Somebody to at least facilitate to be able to get it going, get it started. So if that's the case with improv and having, like having an improv situation, then if you need that, then it makes sense that the teacher in China goes out to recess with the children to get them started.
Yeah, and it validates that they place value on what the kids are doing.
Exactly.
Which,
because in America, look, as an educator, I would say it because I'm not educated anymore, but I would say it even if I were an educator, still, at least a paid educator, which is that a lot of times in recess, teachers look the other way. It's like that's their time to grade something.
Right.
Yeah, they don't even look. They don't even look at what the kids are doing. They don't participate in it really.
And they don't let themselves have any of that kind of playfulness.
Yeah, that part.
But it's such a freedom, and it's like the best kept secret from us here. I think other cultures understand it because they see that as a different activity than we do here.
Well, I think our culture, when I say our, I'm talking about the black culture, the African American culture from whence we came. I think that we understood that, once upon a time, we really understood the power of just free thought, free play, free a bunch of stuff, and I think, and we kind of,
have lost some of it by assimilation.
Lost in it. Yep.
And so I think that's what I love to remind us of historically. You're talking about the history now. It's still here. I mean, our music, how we use music, dance. Somebody wrote a book, The Body Keeps the Score. It does. It's sensitive. There's energy there. And all of those things are what you're talking about that we knew. I think that's how come we're still alive, frankly, because we could create with each other. It wasn't frivolous. It was much deeper than that.
And other cultures, around the world, I got the benefit, to be able to travel the world.
Yeah.
Mostly because of my military career, but then also outside of my military career, and I tell African Americans a lot that how other cultures, other people around the world, how they look at us as a beacon of hope. They look at us like a people. It's like, how can you got 16, 19. You were enslaved all the way up through 1865, and then you got the Reconstruction, and you got Jim Crow and all this other stuff, and then you got a lot of, even today, you got a lot of institutional racism and all kinds of anti-blackness, and around not only the United States but around the world, and they are like, how can you go through that? It's a very short period of time. On when we're talking about the ages of some of the some of the greatest civilizations that ever roamed this earth, from the dynasties in China, we're just babies, we're barely crawling. But the thing of it is that people look at African Americans and what we were able to overcome in such a short period of time, and then they'll talk about their own culture and their own history, and how maybe their people were enslaved for 2,000 years, but they've been out of slavery for 3,000 or 4,000 years, and how they still can't seem to get a foot. In other words, it still affects them so much, and it's like, you guys are just barely out of slavery, and the footprint that you have on not only the United States but the world, because people know, I say all the time, without us, the United States would be Canada South. And Canada South would just eat them up and be like, okay, it's all Canada now. But that's the impact. And so I think that improv, having the ability, okay, there's got to be something, like I said, where other people look at us and it's like, how are you able to? We have been out of slavery in the country that I'm from for 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years, and we are still not where you guys are. That's got a lot to do with what you're talking about right now, Rachelle.
Yeah,
I believe.
And I do too, and I couldn't have said it as well as you. And I don't even really understand it. I think it's quantum, what you're talking about. I think it's energy. I think it's synchronicity. I think it's powerful, powerful spirituality.
Probably a little epigenetics in there too.
Yeah, well, yes. If I could spell it, I would say it. Yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
it. But yeah, it's a lot of things that have gotten me to really appreciate who we are now, because I had learned racism like everybody else from TV and radio and whatnot. So I knew we were the bad people, the stupid people. It goes into a little kid's head. We can't differentiate that person also looks like me. I start feeling like that person, like I'm never going to measure up, because I saw that they were all the bad people on TV. It was that propaganda that was deep. But this has gotten me to actually understand more politically why that all is that way. Because what you're talking about is something that I think we need to continue to, the oral tradition that was so deep in our culture that kind of got lost. I think we have an option, even though I'm not a techie, but the brilliance of technology now and the ability to reach people like that with information that never was going on when I was growing up. I mean, what we can teach now in an instant, and like what we're doing, we don't even have to be in the same country to be doing what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So, and I just feel much more hopeful than I ever did when I was younger. Maybe I'm more idealistic. I don't know. I think it's because I'm actually doing what we're talking about doing, like what you're talking about doing. You are doing what you believe to help other people. You're an activist. You aren't just sitting on your couch commiserating about ain't it awful. And you know history, and you value it, and you teach. That's a value, to pass on the information to the younger generations. I didn't have children because of what I do. I have lots of children. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
I'm able to be at home doing what I want to be doing. I need to be doing what I'm doing and not have to feed something at home, a dog, a cat, a plant. My therapist couldn't believe, you don't even have a plant. No, I don't feed anything in my house but me, obviously. But no, I don't have time. I have stuff to do.
So, we talked a little bit about how, we believe we were able to kind of survive the most, the most violent, the most vile, slavery, in America, which is chattel slavery. I talk about that a lot, and because it's different than any other slavery, in the world. Yes, exactly. And so, but in order to survive, but we had things. So as you was talking about, I bring that back up because as you were talking about social therapeutics, and how it relates to, your normal, or I don't want to say normal, that's the wrong word, or I would say your traditional, that's what I'm wanting to say. Your traditional, the way people feel that therapy, therapy should be, the way they are taught that it should be. Like you talked about how, you learn through school one way, right? But then you start to learn other things, and I use that all the time too. You've heard me say that. Yeah, I've been through all the levels of uh, post secondary education, right? Been through all the levels. However, okay, that's cool. I enjoyed it or whatever. Put it on the wall and keep moving. But
Yeah.
my true teachers, you hear me say all the time, is Marcus Garvey and Fannie Lou Hamer, and and I name all these folks, but that's who, so and that's what I feel you're saying about this world of psychology, psychiatry, philosophy, is that yes, there's a way to learn it this way, that we have to do in order to be able to do the work that we need to do. So as you was talking about social therapeutics, I kind of compared that in my head to MDs and DOs, right?
Okay.
So we it's so socially acceptable to have an MD, a medical doctor, right? Yeah. And I tell people all the time, I personally prefer a DO, a doctor of osteopath, than an MD, because an MD will tell you, let's say you got a fungus on your foot, on your toe or something, right? The the MD tells you, the MD says, okay, look, let me prescribe you this topical, ointment to put on that, that fungus or whatever it is, right? Yeah. But as a DO wants to figure out through your entire body concept, how did it get there? Why is it there? So, and that's what I feel with social therapeutics is with, in the world of psychology, in that world, I feel social therapeutics is more of that. It's more of the DO than the MD.
Yeah, I like that. And you know what DO spells do?
Well,
so
I never thought of that.
I didn't either. I mean,
that was improv, right?
Right then. Because what we're doing is what we're doing.
Right.
We're doing it. Like, what's his name? That group. I can't remember. Quincy Jones.
Oh, Quincy Jones, yeah.
I mean, I'm even listening to music while we're talking because music is my church.
Right.
It's what keeps me from really being the crazy person I thought I was, I think. And I'm not really listening to it, like on a conscious, intentional level. It's in my background. It's in these speakers. I don't hear things. I really do have it in the speakers. Right. And it's calming. It's much better than Better Living Through Chemistry. It keeps me kind of energetically balanced. It's just one of the things that are more performatory and artistic and, the kinds of things that I really think are important that, like you said, in our educational system, it's kind of going away. Music isn't even being taught hardly anymore, and play and creativity. And it's the creativity that's so powerful, and it requires others to create with. I don't think we create alone. Even if we think we're alone, we are informed by our history. Like right here in this room, there are two of us, but there's at least 50 people here in this conversation.
Right.
Their ancestors go back and back and back and back. And then the people that we're informed by right now in our environments. There's lots of folks in this room. And so I don't know, it's the social part of social therapy is key for me because it immediately addresses the alienation that I grew up with and you did, and is in our culture. And the therapeutics part of it is the healing part. And I think of myself as a healer, which requires permission from the other person. I don't do anything to people. I'm not like top down. What we're doing together is we're creating something together that requires both of us doing it, not one or the other. And we don't even have to know what the it is so much because it's non-epistemological. It doesn't have like a thing. We're not thingifying. But it is, to me, what I've been looking for to help humanity. And I like to spell human, Hueman, a lot. You know what I'm saying? Because exactly. We all are human of some level of melanin.
Absolutely.
Some of us have less than others,
Yeah.
but it's human.
No,
And it was the first thing that was humanistic to me that I was learning. And it was after the formal education. Very controversial at the time, and probably still is. And that was good for me too, because I felt that that's why it was, because it was something that was useful for humans, and especially humans that look like me. And ironically, maybe not ironically, the people that taught me this do not look like me at all. And yet they get it. They get what I was experiencing for a lot of reasons, mostly class. Poverty is what informed a lot of people that started social therapy. You know, that was like what you said is the disease. Poverty, racism,
yes.
sexism, all of the isms. That's the illness. And so this was a way that we could, you know, struggle through that and actually change the environments that were dominated by that.
So when you said that you are a healer, okay, what I hear, I'm going to just kind of bring two things together. When you say that you are a healer, okay, and I'm looking at a beautiful black woman say that she's a healer. So what I hear and what I see is medicine woman, right? You know, everything that was prevalent, or that was how can I say, not prevalent, many of the things that were great about our history and our past was, as we call it today, cultural appropriations, right? It was stolen, right? So it was stolen. And so back in the day, there wasn't this class of, you know, white men running around being medical doctors. You know, everybody, if you're sick, even on plantations, you go get the medicine woman. Okay, that's your healer. That black lady with some bag, and she come in there, and she's not that far removed from her homeland, and she come, and she spent about, you know, 2 or 3 hours in there with old massa, and and about 2 or 3 days, massa is back up slaving folks. You know what I'm saying? But so you are a healer, you are a medicine woman. You see? And so you were taught, like you said, you were taught by people who didn't look like you. But guess who they learned it from? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Today, probably 90% of the farmers in America don't look like me and you.
Yeah.
But they didn't know anything about agriculture. So just like, you know, you culturally appropriate it, and then you regurgitate and say, look what I taught, Laura Rachelle Moore. You didn't teach her anything. Her ancestor taught you, partner. So
in spite of everything.
In spite of everything.
To take it away.
You know.
In spite of propaganda, in spite of conditioning, in spite of racism, in spite of murder and mayhem and genocide and all of the things, we just keep coming. I mean, it's in spite of. And
it all has to come back home.
Yeah.
And that is what, the other culture is afraid of, is that that it has to come back home. You can't keep something that was given to you, It has to go back out into the universe, and it has to go back to its rightful owners. And so, so I definitely value, everything that you're doing. And I guess we can, where we at? We're at 7:55. I guess what we can do, Rachelle, is I want you to just, I know you're a freestyler, and I appreciate it. And like I told the people, we're going to have a conversation. Most of the time, on this series of with my mental health series is going to be conversations, because you guys bring so many different things to the table, and of course, you are going to be one of the people that I'm going to frequently have on, a contributor, to be able to bring some of this stuff home to us and make it all make sense, you know. And we I have a couple of the traditional kind of therapists, because I know some people they want to hear that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
but we are we traditional? I think we're very non-traditional when
Yeah.
we as a people,
Yeah.
so yeah. And
We'd be alive if we were traditional.
exactly, exactly. And so, but anyway, what I want you to do is just kind of just wrap it up, bring it home for us, and even if you want to, I'm not sure if you want to even let people know how they can contact you if they need to, speak with you one on one. But just kind of wrap it up and take it home. Do the final stretch for us.
Okay, gee whiz. You told me I don't know how to wrap anything up, so you just tell me to shut up. But yeah, please, you can contact me. I do have a private practice. My name is my brand, L. Rachelle Moore, LCSW, which is Licensed Clinical Social Worker, and I have an LLC now. I'm an adult now. I have my own LLC, and you can reach me. Do I give them the phone number?
Whatever you think you want to give them, phone number, email, or whatever.
Yeah, 404 550 7560. The email address is L, first letter of Laura, Rachelle, Rachelle, Moore, Moore, 2016 at Gmail. That's the best way to reach me by email. Or you can text me using the phone number. Or you can call me. I am old school. I like the phone. I like to talk, if you didn't notice. That's been problematic for some people, but not so much for me. Anyway, what else? My practice is mostly virtual right now. I like Zoom since COVID. It has been really efficient, I think, in bringing more people together that need to be together. I am weekly with colleagues and friends who practice this method, and they're from around the world. And it is just so gratifying to see people around the world doing what Rodney and I are talking about today, helping people in different ways. They're not all mental health folks, and yet they believe in the philosophy that social therapeutics has been able to help us do. And then Zoom came in to help us reach each other. I can't say enough about that technology. It's just, and so we're together. There are lots of us together doing this kind of work from around the world. And I mean,
Well, I have personally seen some of the work that you have done. I have been invited. You have invited me to many of the workshops and the different people that you come in contact with throughout the world. You've done that over the course of a few years, and I definitely appreciate it. I've learned so much, and I think that in a lot of some of the stuff that you do there, that you invite people to, there's no charge for it. Sometimes there
Right.
is, and but most of the time it's not. And so
No.
it ain't, when you help people. The good thing about it is, as you talk to people, as you get other people to learn some of the things that you're learning, like you did with me. It's like, well, you're not going to have to, and you got a lovely voice, but you're not going to have to hear Rachelle's voice all the time. She's going to have you to listen to other people,
Right.
who either know more than she does, and sometimes I think she thinks some of these people know. I'm like, oh, I don't think they know more than you, but they know stuff, but they don't know the
Yeah.
stuff Not, I'm talking about some of the workshops and stuff that I've been invited to with you. So I think the kind of audience that we have that listens to the Black Man's Roundtable, I think will appreciate the way that you go about helping people understand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best therapy you can possibly have. Like you said, you didn't even go into the field to help others. You went really to help yourself. And
Yeah.
so and helping them learn, and like you always talk about, you had to learn who you were in order to help yourself. And I think that our listening audience here on the Black Man's Roundtable will appreciate, instead of you talking at them, you basically teach them about themselves, and through teaching them about themselves, they learn, a whole new way of looking at life. And I tell people all the time, I think you heard me say not too long ago, I think you heard me say this for the first time when I said, I tell people, you cannot beat your kids out of you. You can't do it. You cannot beat your kids out of you. And I see people try to do that all the time. And it's like, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. So
Yeah.
learn who you are, and you will stop trying to, you would look at your children, for instance, as, because that's where most of the trauma and most everything start at. You would look at your children as individuals, and they are not you. So stop hitting them trying to get that out of it. You're not going to do it. It's not going to work. So anyway, Rachelle, I've appreciated this conversation today. I'm sure our audience has appreciated it. And I just want to make sure our audience understand that you're not going anywhere. Many of the people, absolutely, many of the people that come on the Black Man's Roundtable, they know, my audience know, you're going to see them again. You're going to see them again, absolutely. And so we look forward to having you as I don't like to say mental health, I almost like to say mental wellness contributor on the roundtable. And when I need you, I know that you'll be there. I've even said that I may have to call you sometimes in the middle of an episode but
fine.
Yeah, but the good thing is you got everything set up in your house and you can jump right on, and so that's good. So, but anyway,
excuse me. When you
go ahead.
were talking about mental health just now, I thought about mental stealth.
Oh, mental stealth. I'm right.
When I was,
you know what? I did hear you say that one time, I think.
Yeah, mental stealth.
Well, I either read it or something. Okay, yeah.
In the military kind of sense of stealth,
yeah.
I also kind of admire ninjas. My little icon is a ninja therapist.
Got it.
Ninja with music and some other stars and whatnot. But mental stealth.
Yeah.
And that, I mean that in a powerful stealth way, not assassin, although I like to read about them, but I'm very peace loving.
Well, look, Rachelle, it's been a great conversation, and I appreciate always learning, from you and with you.
And vice versa. This is a
absolutely
two-way.
Always. It's always been a two-way thing with us. So we're gonna keep that going. And so look, family, until next time, this is Rachelle Moore. And you will be seeing her, much more of her, play on your last name. You'll be seeing much more of her on the Black Man's Roundtable. And look, family, until next time, I will see you out in them streets and those suites. See you next time. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.